The regeneration core exploded, not like a normal explosion. This was a biological reaction as the heart of the dreadnought died. Green fire erupted from the impact point, spreading through the ship's organic systems like poison in veins. The dreadnought screamed. The sound came through space itself, transmitted through its dying hull. Every wreck ship in the area felt it. The hive mind felt one of its greatest vessels die. The chain reaction was unstoppable. The core's destruction spread to the power systems, then to the weapons, then to the bioarmor. In seconds, the entire dreadnought was consumed by green fire. It tore itself apart from the inside, pieces of organic metal spinning into space. The Defiant was caught in the blast. The front third of the ship was simply gone, vaporized by the initial impact. What remained tumbled through space, trailing debris and atmosphere. Emergency lights flickered on the bridge. Half the stations were dead. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Minho opened his eyes. He was still alive. Somehow, impossibly, he was still breathing. He looked around the bridge. Yuna was pulling herself up from the floor, blood running from a cut on her forehead. Jiwon was slumped over her console, unconscious but breathing. Taeyang sat at his station, stunned and shaking. Selman was working on her console with one arm hanging useless at her side. "Sound off," Minho croaked. His throat was full of smoke. "Engineering here." Daehyun's voice was barely audible through static. "I'm alive. Most of my team is alive. But Captain, the ship is dead. We have no engines, no weapons, no shields. Life support is running on emergency power only." "Sickbay reporting," Heejin said. "Multiple casualties, but we're managing. Captain, you need to order evacuation to the remaining pods." Minho looked at the main screen. It was cracked but still showing the space outside. The dreadnought was gone. Just scattered pieces now. The other Vrex bioships were retreating. Without the dreadnought to coordinate them, they were confused and disorganized. They fled back toward Vrex space. "Taeyang, can you reach those transports?" Minho asked. The young ensign's hand shook as he worked his damaged console. "I'm trying, sir." "Wait, yes, I have them on long range. Are they safe?" A pause as Taeyang checked the data. Then his young face broke into a smile. Tears ran down his cheeks. "Yes, sir. They're outside Vrex weapons range. They're going to make it." The bridge crew looked at each other. They had done it. Against impossible odds, against a dreadnought and 20 bioships, against every reasonable expectation. They had saved 3,000 lives. Minho started to laugh. It was the tired laugh of a man who had come through hell and survived. "We did it. We actually did it." Yuna limped over to his chair. "Sir, I'm detecting ships on approach. Multiple contacts. Coalition battle group. They're here." "Bit late," Minho said. But he was smiling. The coalition reinforcements arrived to find the battle already over. 20 warships from different species. They had come expecting to fight a Vrex swarm. Instead, they found one dead human ship floating in space, surrounded by the debris of an entire Vrex attack force. The coalition commander, a Taurian admiral named Kravesh, opened a channel to the Defiant. His voice was full of disbelief. "Human vessel, this is Admiral Kravesh. What happened here?" "We saved the convoy," Minho replied simply. "Lost our ship doing it, but everyone got out safe." "You engaged 20 Vrex ships in a dreadnought with a single warship?" Seemed like the right thing to do at the time. There was a long silence. Then Kravesh said quietly, "We're sending rescue craft. Stand by for evacuation." Coalition ships swarmed around the Defiant. Medical teams came aboard and started treating the wounded. Engineers surveyed the damage, shaking their heads in amazement that anyone had survived. The crew was evacuated carefully, taken to the coalition vessels. Minho was the last to leave. He walked through his broken ship one final time, past damaged corridors and burned-out systems, past the places where good people had stood at their posts and fought the impossible fight. In engineering, he found Daehyun sitting against a wall, too tired to move. "Come on, old friend," Minho said, helping him up. "Time to go." "She was a good ship," Daehyun said, looking around at his engine room. "The best," Minho agreed. In the Marine Bay, Jamin was being loaded onto a stretcher. He had been found floating in space, his armor's emergency systems having protected him just long enough. He was badly injured but alive. When he saw Minho, he tried to salute. "Rest, Marine," Minho said gently. "You earned it." The entire crew was transferred to the coalition flagship. They gathered in the hangar bay, 220 survivors. Dirty, injured, exhausted, but alive. The Coalition crew stared at them with a mixture of shock and respect. Admiral Krevesh came to meet them personally. He was a tall Taurian with silver skin and forearms. His species was ancient, powerful, respected throughout the galaxy. He looked at the ragged group of humans and slowly saluted. "You saved 3,000 lives today," Krevesh said. "You engaged an enemy force that should have destroyed you in seconds. You fought with courage beyond measure. The Coalition owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid." Minho returned the salute. "We just did our duty, sir." "No," Krevesh shook his head. "You did far more than duty. You showed us something we had forgotten. You showed us what it means to stand and fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. Many species in the Coalition have become comfortable. We follow protocols. We wait for reinforcements. We calculate acceptable losses." He looked directly at Minho. "You reminded us that some things are worth dying for." Over the following days, word of the battle spread across the galaxy. The story of the human warship that had fought alone against 20 Vrex vessels and a dreadnought. The ship that had saved 3,000 children at the cost of its own destruction. It became legendary. Other species started to see humans differently, not as primitive newcomers but as something else, as warriors who would stand when others ran, as people who valued life above their own safety, as a species with something special that could not be taught or learned. Something that simply was. The Galactic Coalition called an emergency session. For the first time, a human was invited to address the full council. Captain Minho Kang stood before thousands of representatives from hundreds of species and told them what had happened. He spoke simply and honestly. He did not make himself a hero. He talked about his crew, about Yuna's brilliant tactics, about Jiwan's flying, about Daehyun's determination, about Hyejin's healing, about Jaemin's sacrifice, about every person who had chosen to stay at their post. When he finished, the council chamber was silent. Then slowly representatives from across the galaxy stood and applauded. It started with a few and grew until every being in the chamber was standing, honoring the crew of the Defiant. The Coalition took an unprecedented vote. Humanity was offered a permanent seat on the War Council, the council that made decisions about military operations across all Coalition space. Humans would now have a voice equal to species that had been spacefaring for thousands of years. More than that, the Coalition asked humanity to help train their military forces, to teach them how to think like humans, how to see impossible situations and find ways to win anyway, how to care more about protecting life than following protocols. The Defiant was recovered and towed back to a Coalition shipyard. Instead of scrapping it, they rebuilt it completely. The ship became a memorial and a museum. People from across the galaxy came to walk its corridors and see where humans had made their stand. In the captain's chair, now behind protective glass, was a plaque. It listed every name of the crew who had served that day. At the bottom was a simple inscription. They were outnumbered. They were outgunned. They had every reason to retreat. But they stayed because lives depended on them. This is humanity. Minho and his crew received the Coalition's highest honor, the Star of Valor. Only 3 beings in Coalition history had ever received it before. Now 220 humans wore it. But the real change was deeper than medals and honors. The galaxy had learned something about humanity. When pushed to the edge, when faced with impossible choices, humans would sacrifice everything to save those who could not save themselves. It was not strategy or technology or firepower that made humans dangerous. It was their refusal to accept that some people could not be saved. 6 months later, the UNS Defiant II was commissioned. A new warship, bigger and more powerful than the original. Captain Minho Kang stood on its bridge, his original crew around him. They had all chosen to serve together again. The Defiant II's first mission was to patrol the Outer Rim, protecting Coalition convoys. As they prepared to launch, Minho looked around at his bridge crew. At Yuna, now a full commander. At Jiwan, who had been offered a position training Coalition pilots. At Taiyang, no longer the nervous young ensign but a confident officer. At Sumin, whose precision had saved them so many times. "Ready to go save the galaxy again?" Minho asked with a slight smile. "Always, Captain," Yuna replied. The Defiant II launched from Earth, heading out into the stars. And across the galaxy, people felt a little safer knowing that if they were in trouble, if they were outnumbered and alone, and facing impossible odds, there might be a human ship close enough to help. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The Vrex drones in the chamber suddenly stopped attacking. They looked around confused, as if seeing things that were not there. Some attacked each other. Others ran in circles. The hive mind was breaking down. "It's working," Jamin shouted into his comm. "The virus is spreading." Outside the dreadnought, the Vrex bioships began firing at random targets. Some shot at asteroids that did not exist. Others fired at each other, thinking they saw enemy vessels. The perfect coordination was gone. The hive mind was experiencing something it had never felt before: confusion, uncertainty, fear. "All Marine teams return to the shuttle," Jamin ordered. His surviving Marines fell back through the tunnels, dragging their wounded with them. The Vrex drones barely noticed them leaving. The virus had them completely confused, but the victory was short-lived. The hive mind was vast and ancient. It began to isolate the infected parts of its network, cutting them off like a body rejecting diseased tissue. The virus had bought them time, but not much. On the Defiance Bridge, warning lights painted everything red. The main screen showed the dreadnought recovering from the virus. Its weapons were coming back online. "Captain, the dreadnought is adapting," Yuna said urgently. "They're purging the infected systems. We have maybe 5 minutes before they're back to full strength." Minho slammed his fist on the chair arm. They had tried everything. Conventional weapons did not work. The boarding action had only given them a brief advantage. What else was there? "Sir, I'm receiving a communication from one of the coalition ships we saved," Taeyang said. "They're asking about our status." "Tell them we're fine," Minho started to say, then stopped. An idea formed in his mind. "Wait, ask them what they're carrying." "What cargo?" Taeyang sent the message. The reply came back quickly. "One of the ships is a transport." They were carrying refugee families. The manifest says 3,000 civilians, mostly children and their parents from a war zone. 3,000 children. Minho felt something cold grip his heart. Those were the people they had saved. Children who would grow up because the Defiant had arrived in time. Children who would live, love, have families of their own. All because one human ship had refused to follow protocols and wait for reinforcements. But now those children were still in danger. The dreadnought was recovering. Once it was operational again, it would chase down those slow transport ships. It would destroy them all, and every child aboard would die screaming in the cold of space. "How far away are the transports now?" Minho asked. G1 checked her console. 30,000 kilometers. They're at maximum speed, but that's not very fast for civilian ships. "And the dreadnought's weapons range?" 40,000 kilometers, Yuna answered quietly. She understood where this was going. "Captain, once they're operational, they can still reach those transports." Minho stood from his chair. He walked to the main screen and stared at the dreadnought. The massive ship was already looking more coordinated. The virus effects were fading. Soon it would be a fully functional weapon of war again. The bridge crew watched their captain. They knew that look on his face. He was about to make a decision. A hard one. "How much power do we have left?" Minho asked Daehyun over the comm. From engineering, Daehyun's tired voice replied. "Enough for maybe one more fight. After that, we're dead in space. Life support will last a few hours, but engines and weapons are almost done. Can you give me full engine power?" "Everything we have?" There was a pause. Daehyun understood what was being asked. "You want to ram them. Can you do it?" Another pause, longer this time. Then Daehyun's voice came back, steady and sure. "Yes, Captain. I can give you ramming speed." Yuna turned to Minho, her eyes wide. "Captain, ramming a dreadnought with our ship is suicide. We'll be destroyed on impact." "Those children won't be," Minho said simply. "If we ram the dreadnought, we take it out of the fight. The transports escape. That's the mission." "But sir, the crew—" Taeyang's young voice cracked slightly. Minho looked at his bridge crew, at Yuna, who had served beside him for 5 years, at G1, who could make the Defiant dance through space, at young Taeyang, barely out of school, at Soman at her weapon station, always so calm and precise. "I won't order this," Minho said clearly. "Ramming speed is a suicide run. Anyone who wants to evacuate has 3 minutes to get to the escape pods. That's an order. Save yourselves. You've done more than enough." Nobody moved. The bridge crew looked at each other, then back at their captain. A silent communication passed between them. They had all seen the manifest. 3,000 children. 3,000 lives depending on them. Yuna stepped forward. "With respect, sir, where are you going? Someone has to be your second in command." Ji-won's hand settled on her controls. "And you'll need a pilot." I'm staying. I'll keep the weapons firing until impact, Somin said calmly. Young Taeyang swallowed hard, fear obvious on his face, but he stayed at his station. You'll need communication, sir. Throughout the ship, the same scene played out. In engineering, Daehyun told his team to evacuate. Most refused. In sickbay, Hee-jin sent her nurses to the pods but remained herself. Marines who had just returned from the dreadnought moved back to their stations instead of leaving. In 3 minutes, only 30 people evacuated. 220 stayed at their posts. They knew what was coming. They chose to face it together. Minho felt pride swell in his chest. This was humanity at its best. Flawed, crazy, reckless humans who would rather die standing than live running. They were not the strongest species or the smartest or the most advanced. But they had something the galaxy had never seen before. They had heart. Jamin just reported in, Taeyang said. His shuttle is back in the bay. He's asking what the plan is. Tell him to strap in, Minho ordered. This is going to be rough, Jamin's voice came over the comm. Captain, I'm looking at our trajectory. You're planning to ram them. That's correct. Then you'll need someone to manually target the impact point. Their regeneration core. I saw it when we were inside. It's in the central superstructure. Hit that and the whole ship goes up. Minho hesitated. Jamin, that means going back outside during the ram. You'll be exposed. I know, sir. But if we're doing this, we do it right. In the Marine Bay, Jamin climbed into a small jetpack unit. These were designed for emergency repairs outside the ship. Now he would use one to guide the final attack. His hands moved steadily as he checked the equipment, even though he knew he would not survive what was coming. The Defiant turned. Its battered hull swung around to face the dreadnought. The wreck ship had almost completely recovered from the virus now. Its weapons charged to full power. The hive mind recognized what the humans were attempting. It would shoot them to pieces long before they got close enough to ram. All power to forward shields, Minho commanded. Everything we have left. G1 maximum acceleration. The Defiant's engines roared to life one final time. Every reactor was pushed beyond safety limits. Daehyun watched power readings climb into the red zone and kept pushing. The ship accelerated toward the dreadnought like a bullet. The Virex fired everything. Massive plasma bolts slammed into the Defiant's forward shields. The shields held for 1 second, 2 seconds, then collapsed completely. The next shots tore into the hull itself. The ship shook so hard that equipment ripped free from the walls. Explosions ripped through multiple decks. Fires raged everywhere. In engineering, a plasma conduit exploded, throwing Daehyun across the room. He hit the wall hard but dragged himself back to his console. His hands, burned and bleeding, kept the engines running. In sickbay, Hyejin was thrown to the floor as the ship bucked. Medical equipment crashed around her. She pulled herself up and kept working, treating wounded crew members even as the ship died around them. On the bridge, Minho gripped his chair as the world shook. He watched the distance counter drop. 10,000 meters to impact. 8,000. 6,000. Jamin, you're up, Minho said. The Marine launched himself from the deployment bay. His jetpack carried him ahead of the Defiant right toward the dreadnought. Plasma fire filled the space around him. A bolt passed so close it melted part of his armor. But Jamin kept going. His targeting laser painted the dreadnought's hull. He found the regeneration core exactly where he had seen it from inside, the massive pulsing organ that kept the ship alive. He locked the coordinates and transmitted them to the Defiant. Target locked, Jamin reported. His voice was steady. It's been an honor serving with you all. The honor was ours, Minho replied. Thank you, Marine. 4,000 meters. 3,000. The dreadnought filled the entire screen now. Minho could see individual details in its organic armor. The Vrex were firing point blank, tearing the Defiant apart piece by piece, 2,000 meters. Taeyang gripped his console, eyes squeezed shut. G1 kept her hands on the controls, making micro-adjustments to the trajectory. Somin fired the last torpedoes, clearing a path through the armor. Yuna stood beside Minho's chair, straight and proud. 1,000 meters. Minho opened the ship-wide comm one last time. All hands, this is the captain. You are the bravest people I have ever known. It has been my greatest privilege to serve with you. The galaxy will remember what we did here today. The Vrex dreadnought moved toward them like a mountain of living metal and flesh. Its weapons charged, glowing with green energy. Around it, the remaining 12 bioships formed a protective screen. The hive mind was done being surprised by these strange humans. Target their weapons clusters, Minho ordered. Salmon, make every shot count. The Defiant's main cannon fired again and again. Each shot hit its mark. Salmon never missed. But the Dreadnought's armor was too thick. The energy beams barely scratched its surface. It was like throwing rocks at a tank. No significant damage, Yuna reported. Captain, our weapons can't penetrate that armor. The Dreadnought returned fire. A massive plasma cannon on its bow discharged. The green bolt was as wide as the Defiant's entire hull. Jiwan threw the ship into a desperate roll. The plasma shot missed by less than 50 meters, close enough that the heat radiation made the hull groan. Too close, Jiwan muttered, sweat on her forehead. She could dodge 1 or 2 shots like that, but not forever. Eventually, the Dreadnought would hit them. Down on Deck 12, Marine Commander Yemen Kwan watched the battle unfold on tactical displays. His Marines stood ready in their combat armor, weapons charged. But what could Marines do against enemy ships? They needed to board something to be useful. Jamin stared at the Dreadnought on the screen. An idea formed in his mind. A crazy, stupid, dangerous idea. But maybe crazy was what they needed. He opened a comm channel to the bridge. Captain, this is Jamin. I have a plan, but you're not going to like it. Tell me, Minho responded. Another plasma bolt narrowly missed the ship. Let me board that Dreadnought with my Marines, Jamin said. If we can't hurt it from outside, maybe we can tear it apart from inside. The bridge went silent for a moment. Everyone looked at Minho. Boarding actions were incredibly dangerous. Boarding a wrecked ship was considered suicide. The hive mind controlled everything inside. There would be no confusion, no hesitation, just a perfectly coordinated defense. But Yuna pulled up tactical data on the Dreadnought structure. Her sharp mind worked through the possibilities. Captain, he might be right. If we can't penetrate the armor, we need to get past it. The internal structure will be less defended. We'd need to disable their coordination network, Minho said thoughtfully. Something to disrupt the hive mind. From another station, tech specialist Yoonji Shin spoke up. She was 30 years old, small and quiet most of the time, but when it came to computer systems, she was a genius. I could write a virus, something to attack their bio network, but I'd need to upload it directly into their systems. Which means someone needs to get inside, Jamin finished. That's what my Marines do. Minho looked at each face on his bridge crew. They were scared. How could they not be? But they were also determined. They had come here to save lives. That mission was not finished yet. How long to write the virus? Minho asked Yoonji. Give me 10 minutes, she replied, already typing furiously. Jamin, prepare your boarding team, Minho ordered. Jiwan, get us close to that Dreadnought. Close enough for a boarding shuttle to reach it. Sir, their point defense will shred a shuttle, Jiwan said. Minho's jaw tightened. Then we'll give them bigger targets to shoot at. Launch all remaining drones and fighters. Everything that can fly. Make them choose between shooting at us or shooting at small craft. The plan came together quickly. It was desperate and improvised. Most military strategists would call it reckless. But most military strategists were not human. Jamin assembled his team in the deployment bay, 20 Marines in heavy combat armor, carrying plasma rifles and explosives. These were hard men and women who had fought in the worst places humanity had ever seen. But even they looked nervous about boarding a wrecked Dreadnought. Listen up, Jamin addressed his team. His voice was calm and strong. We're going inside that ship. Our mission is to reach their central network and upload a virus. We hold that position until the virus does its work. Some of us might not come back, but those civilian ships we saved had children on them. Kids who will grow up because we bought their parents time to escape. Remember that when things get hard in there, the Marines nodded. Fear was present, but so was resolve. They would do this because it was right, because someone had to. Yoonji ran into the bay, breathing hard. She carried a data chip glowing with blue light. The virus is ready. Once you plug this into any access port, it will spread through their entire bio network. The hive mind links everything together, which means the virus can reach everywhere at once. What will it do? Jamin asked. It will introduce random errors into their coordination, Yoonji explained. Make them think they're seeing things that aren't there. Basically, it will give the hive mind hallucinations. They won't know what's real anymore. Jamin took the chip carefully and secured it in an armored pouch. Good work. We'll get it uploaded. On the bridge, the battle intensified. The Defiant had launched every small craft it carried. Dozens of drones and fighters swarmed around the dreadnought like angry bees. The Vrex bioships tried to shoot them all down, but there were too many targets. "Now, G1!" Minho commanded. "Get us close." Jawan pushed the engines to maximum. The Defiant accelerated directly toward the dreadnought. Weapons fire filled space around them. The shields sparked and crackled under the assault. Warning alarms screamed throughout the ship. "Shields at 20%, Yuna called out. "We can't take much more." "Just a few more seconds," Jiwan said through gritted teeth. She flew like a woman possessed, weaving between plasma bolts that could vaporize them instantly. The Defiant roared past the dreadnought's starboard side, so close they could see details in the organic armor. At that moment, Jaemin's boarding shuttle launched from the deployment bay. The small craft shot across the gap between ships, carrying 20 Marines toward almost certain death. Vrex point defense guns tracked the shuttle. Energy bolts streaked toward it. But the Defiant fired all its remaining weapons at those gun emplacements, destroying them before they could shoot down the Marines. The shuttle slammed into the dreadnought's hull. Magnetic clamps locked it in place. Marines poured out, using cutting torches to burn through the armor. Green blood sprayed out as they cut into living tissue. The dreadnought screamed, a sound that came through the vacuum of space itself transmitted through the bioship's hull. "We're in," Jimin reported over the comm, moving to locate the central network. Inside the dreadnought, the Marines found themselves in a nightmare. The corridors were not corridors at all. They were tunnels inside a living creature. The walls pulsed with a heartbeat. The floor was soft and spongy. Strange organic cables hung from the ceiling like veins. Everything was covered in the same green slime that coated the exterior. Vrex drones appeared from side passages. These were smaller versions of the ships outside, insectoid creatures as large as dogs. They rushed at the Marines with razor-sharp claws. "Contact front," one Marine shouted. Plasma fire lit up the tunnel. The Marines fired with disciplined precision, cutting down Vrex drones as they came, but more appeared behind them. The hive mind knew they were here now. It was sending everything to stop them. "Keep moving," Jamin ordered. He checked his tactical display, trying to map the interior. Network access should be ahead. They fought their way deeper into the dreadnought. Every step was a battle. The Vrex did not retreat or hesitate. They just kept coming. Marines fell wounded. Jamin pulled them back, making sure no one was left behind. Finally, they reached a large chamber. In the center was a massive organic computer system, pulsing with bioluminescent light. Cables as thick as tree trunks connected it to every part of the ship. This was the network core, the brain that helped coordinate the hive mind's actions. "Yunji, we found it," Jamin reported. On the Defiant, Yunji's voice came through with instructions. "Look for an access port. It should look like a circular opening with smaller openings inside." Jamin scanned the chamber. There, on the side of the core, was exactly what she described. "I see it. Insert the chip and activate it," Yunji said. "The upload will take 60 seconds. Jamin moved toward the access port. Behind him, his Marines formed a defensive perimeter, firing at Vrex drones that poured into the chamber. The noise was deafening. Plasma bolts flew in every direction. He pulled out the data chip and pushed it into the port. The chip glowed brighter. Numbers scrolled across its surface. The upload had begun. 50 seconds, Yunji counted down. More Vrex drones entered the chamber. These were bigger soldier class. They had thicker armor and larger weapons. One Marine went down, then another. "Hold the line," Jamin shouted. He grabbed a rifle from a wounded Marine and started firing. Outside, the Defiant was dying. Shields were completely gone. The hull was torn open in dozens of places. Fires burned on multiple decks. In engineering, Daehyun worked with burned hands to keep the engines running. 30 seconds. Yunji's voice was tense. Minho watched his ship fall apart around him. "Jamin, whatever you're doing, do it faster." In the chamber, the Marines were being overwhelmed. Too many Vrex, too little ammunition. Jamin stood over the access port, protecting it with his body. He fired his rifle until it overheated, then drew his pistol. The main screen erupted with light and movement. 5 coalition ships hung in space like wounded animals surrounded by predators. Their shields flickered and sparked under constant weapons fire. 20 Vrex bioships circled them like sharks sensing blood and water. The Vrex vessels looked nothing like normal spacecraft. They were organic, grown from living tissue that pulsed with sickly green light. Each ship resembled a massive insect with multiple limbs ending in weapons that fired streams of acidic plasma. Thick armor plating covered their bodies, and worse, that armor could heal itself. Shooting a wreck ship was like trying to kill something that refused to die. "Shields up, all weapons hot," Minho commanded. His voice stayed calm even as his heart pounded. "Target the nearest wreck ship and fire." Salmon's fingers danced across her weapons console. The Defiant's main cannon roared to life, sending a massive energy beam into the nearest wreck's vessel. The shot punched through its armor, tearing a huge hole in the organic hull. Green blood sprayed into space, but then Minho watched in horror as the hole began to close. The wreck ship's tissue knitted itself back together in seconds, like watching a wound heal in fast motion. Within moments, the damage was completely repaired. "Captain, their bioarmor is regenerating faster than we can damage it," Yuna reported, frustration in her voice. "I see it," Minho said grimly. This was going to be harder than he thought. The wreck swarm noticed the newcomer. 10 of their ships broke away from the convoy and turned toward the Defiant. They moved with perfect coordination, the hive mind controlling all of them at once. No hesitation, no confusion. Just deadly efficiency. "Multiple incoming," Jiwan called out. "They're trying to surround us." "Don't let them," Minho ordered. "Keep moving." Random patterns. Jiwan's hands flew across her controls. The Defiant suddenly rolled hard to port, then dove downward relative to the convoy plane. The wreck ships fired streams of green plasma where the Defiant had been a second before, but Jiwan was already somewhere else. The human warship twisted and spun through space in ways that seemed impossible for something so large. Jiwan made the Defiant dance. The wrecks expected logical flight paths and straight-line approaches. That was how most species fought in space, but Jiwan did not follow any pattern. She flew on pure instinct. The hive mind could not predict her because she did not know what she would do next herself. This confused the wrecks, who relied on calculating probable enemy movements. Against a human pilot flying by feeling, their predictive algorithms failed. "Firing torpedoes," Soman announced. 4 missiles streaked from the Defiant's tubes, each one trailing fire as it accelerated toward different wreck ships. 2 torpedoes missed as their targets dodged, but 2 found their marks, slamming into wreck's vessels and exploding deep inside their organic hulls. This time the damage was too severe to regenerate quickly. One wreck ship spun out of control, venting atmosphere and green blood. The other exploded in a ball of green fire. 2 confirmed kills, Yuna said with satisfaction. On the other coalition ships, the crews watched in amazement through their sensors. A single human warship was actually fighting the wreck swarm and winning. Most species would have used careful, methodical tactics. The humans were doing something else entirely, something wild and unpredictable. One of the coalition vessels managed to send a communication. "Human ship, what are you doing here? You should have waited for reinforcements." Taeyang looked to Minho, who nodded. "Tell them we don't leave people behind." More wreck ships broke away from the convoy to deal with this annoying human vessel. Now 15 bioships were focused entirely on destroying the Defiant. They came from all directions at once, filling space with plasma fire. "Shields at 70%, Yuna reported as impacts rocked the ship. The bridge lights flickered. "We're taking heavy fire." Down in engineering, Daehyun worked frantically to keep power flowing to the shields. Sparks flew from damaged conduits. His team worked around him, patching systems as fast as they failed. "Reroute power from life support to shields," Daehyun ordered. "We can breathe later. Right now, we need to stay alive." His engineers obeyed without question. They trusted their chief completely. Daehyun had kept ships running in impossible situations before. He would do it again. The Defiant shuddered as a plasma bolt punched through a weak spot in the shields. The shot tore into the hull near the port weapons array. Atmosphere vented into space before emergency bulkheads slammed shut. "Hull breach on deck 7, Taeyang called out. "Damage control teams responding." Minho gripped his chair tighter. They were taking damage faster than expected. But they were also buying time for the convoy. 2 of the coalition ships had managed to repair their FTL drives. They jumped to safety, carrying hundreds of civilians away from danger. 3 ships remaining, Yuna noted. "If we can hold out a few more minutes, they might all escape." "Then we hold," Minho said simply. Jiwan sent the Defiant into a corkscrewing spiral that brought them right through the wreck's formation. Point defense guns fired in all directions, filling space with tracer fire. Several wreck ships took damage, forced to break formation. "Commander," Soman called out, "I'm noticing something about their attack patterns." Yuna looked at the tactical display. "What is it?" They're coordinating perfectly because of the hive mind, So Min explained. But that also means they all expect the same thing. If we can confuse one, we confuse all of them. Yuna's eyes lit up. She understood immediately. Captain, I have an idea. It's crazy. Crazy is what we do best, Minho replied. Let's hear it. Yuna quickly outlined her plan. The Vrex hive mind made them strong because they worked as one organism, but it also made them predictable. They thought with one consciousness, which meant they had one perspective, one way of seeing the battle. Humans were different. Each person on the Defiant had their own mind, their own thoughts. They could see things from multiple angles at once. That was a weakness in most situations, but against a hive mind it was a strength. We split their attention, Yuna explained. Launch all our drones at once, each programmed with different movement patterns. The hive mind will try to track all of them simultaneously. While they're distracted, we hit them hard. Minho nodded. Do it. The Defiant launched every drone it carried. 50 small unmanned craft shot out in all directions, each one moving differently. Some flew straight, some spiraled, some changed direction randomly. The Vrex ships tried to track all of them at once. For a crucial 3 seconds, the hive mind was overwhelmed by too much conflicting data. In those 3 seconds, the Defiant fired everything it had. Torpedoes, cannon fire, and missiles all hit the confused Vrex ships. 3 more Vrex vessels exploded. Others took critical damage. The hive mind recoiled, actually falling back for a moment as it tried to process what happened. It worked, Taeyang said in amazement. The remaining coalition ships used the opportunity to escape. Their FTL drives activated one by one and they vanished in flashes of blue light. All the civilians were safe now. But the Defiant was still surrounded by 12 very angry Vrex ships. All targets safe, Yuna confirmed. We can retreat now. But before Minho could give the order, sensors screamed a warning. Something massive was coming out of FTL. Something bigger than anything they had seen before. A Vrex dreadnought entered normal space. It was 5 times the size of the Defiant, covered in thick armor plating and weapons. This was not just a bioship. This was a mobile fortress. The bridge went silent. Everyone stared at the massive vessel on the screen. They had barely survived against smaller ships. How could they possibly fight something like that? Shields at 40%, Yuna said quietly. Weapons need time to reload. Hull damage on multiple decks. Captain, we can't win this fight. Minho knew she was right. But he also knew something else. If they ran now, the Vrex would chase them, and behind them, moving slowly away, were those coalition ships full of civilians. Ships that could not outrun Vrex vessels, Jiwan, Minho said. How fast can we go on full impulse? The pilot checked her console. Fast enough to be annoying, sir. Despite everything, Minho smiled. Then let's be annoying. Keep that dreadnought focused on us. Buy those civilian ships more time to get away. The crew understood what he was asking. Stay and fight an unwinnable battle so others could live. It was what humans did. What they had always done throughout history. Stand and fight when any sane species would run. All hands, Minho announced. We're staying in the fight. Throughout the ship, the crew responded. In sickbay, Heejin prepared for more wounded. In the armory, Soman loaded the last torpedoes. In engineering, Daehyun pushed the engines past their safety limits. The Defiant turned to face the dreadnought. One small human ship against a Vrex fortress. The odds could not be worse. But humans had never cared much about odds. The bridge of the UNS Defiant hummed with quiet activity as the warship moved through empty space. Captain Minho Kang sat in his command chair, watching the star field on the main screen. His ship had been patrolling the outer rim for 3 weeks now. Nothing exciting ever happened out here. That was usually a good thing. Minho was 40 years old and had served in Earth's Navy for 20 years. He had a calm face that rarely showed emotion, but his crew knew he cared deeply about every person on his ship. His dark hair was starting to show gray at the temples. He wore the standard blue uniform of the United Nations Space Fleet with pride. Commander Yuna Park stood beside his chair, reviewing tactical reports on her data pad. She was his second in command and the smartest officer he had ever worked with. Yuna had short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She was 35 and had graduated top of her class from the academy. When it came to battle strategy, nobody was better. At the helm, Lieutenant Jiwan Kim guided the ship with steady hands. Jiwan was the best pilot in the fleet, everyone said so. She was 28 with long hair tied back in a tight bun. She could make the Defiant dance through space like it weighed nothing. Her fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease. Young Ensign Taeyang Lee sat at the communications station. At only 22, he was the youngest officer on the bridge. Taeyang had joined the fleet right out of school, eager to see the galaxy. His boyish face still showed his excitement about space travel. He monitored all incoming signals, making sure nothing was missed. The Defiant was not the biggest human warship, but it was tough. The ship was 300 meters long with heavy armor plating covering the hull. It carried 20 torpedo tubes, dozens of point defense guns, and a powerful main cannon. The crew numbered 250 people from all over Earth. Humanity had only been part of the Galactic Coalition for 15 years. Most alien species still saw humans as newcomers. The Coalition had thousands of member species, some with technology far beyond Earth's capabilities. Many aliens thought humans were primitive and reckless. They barely tolerated human ships in Coalition space. Minho did not care what the aliens thought. His job was to protect Coalition citizens and keep the peace. If other species looked down on humans, that was their problem. He would prove human worth through actions, not words. The peaceful quiet of the bridge suddenly broke. Warning lights flashed red across Taeyang's console. The young ensign's eyes went wide as he listened to something through his earpiece. "Captain, I'm receiving a distress signal," Taeyang said, his voice rising with urgency. "It's a Coalition convoy. They're under attack." Minho sat forward in his chair. "Put it on speakers." Static filled the bridge, then a desperate voice came through. The speaker was from the Taurian species, their words translated automatically. "This is transport vessel Gentle Tide to any Coalition ships. We are under attack by Vrex forces. Repeat, Vrex swarm ships are attacking our convoy. We have civilians on board. We need immediate assistance." More voices came through the signal, screaming and shouting. Weapons fire could be heard in the background. Then the signal cut to static again. "How far away?" Minho asked. Ji-won checked her navigation console. 20 minutes at maximum FTL speed, sir." Yuna pulled up tactical data on the main screen. Long-range sensors show the convoy. 5 Coalition vessels. I'm reading 20 Vrex bioships surrounding them. Minho felt his stomach tighten. 20 ships against 1. The Vrex were an insectoid species that worked as a hive mind. Their ships were grown, not built, from living tissue that could regenerate damage. Fighting them was like fighting a swarm of angry wasps. Each ship was controlled by the collective consciousness of the entire hive. "What about Coalition reinforcements?" Minho asked. Taeyang shook his head. "The nearest Coalition battle group is 4 hours away, sir. The convoy won't last that long." The bridge went silent. Everyone knew what this meant. Coalition protocol said they should wait for reinforcements when outnumbered. Going into battle against 20 ships with only 1 was suicide. It went against every rule in the book, but those were civilians dying out there. Men, women, and children from species across the galaxy. They had maybe an hour before the Vrex broke through their shields and tore them apart. Dr. Heejin Choi's voice came over the internal comm. "Captain, I'm hearing emergency alerts." "What's happening?" "We have a situation, Doctor," Minho replied. "Prepare sickbay for possible casualties." Heejin was the chief medical officer, 42 years old with steady hands and a kind heart. She had saved countless lives over her career. "Understood, Captain. We'll be ready." Minho looked at Yuna. His commander met his eyes and gave a small nod. She knew what he was thinking. They had served together for 5 years and rarely needed words to communicate. "Ji-won, set course for the convoy," Minho ordered. "Maximum speed, sir." Taeyang turned around, surprise on his young face. "Coalition protocols say we should wait for backup when outnumbered 3 to 1 or more." "I know the protocols, Ensign," Minho said calmly. "But those people will be dead before backup arrives." "We're going in," Yuna stepped forward. "Captain, we're outnumbered 20 to 1. "The Vrex will tear us apart, probably," Minho agreed. "But we took an oath to protect Coalition citizens. That includes protecting them even when the odds are bad. Especially then." Ji-won's hands moved across her console. "Course laid in, sir. FTL drive charging." "All hands, this is the captain," Minho announced over the ship-wide comm. "Battle stations. We're engaging Vrex forces to rescue a civilian convoy. This won't be easy, but it's the right thing to do. Show them what humans are made of." Throughout the ship, crew members rushed to their positions. In engineering, Chief Daehyun Song began routing power to weapons and shields. Daehyun was 50 years old, the oldest officer on board. He had been maintaining starships since before humanity joined the Coalition. If anyone could keep the Defiant running through hell itself, it was him. In the armory, weapons officer Soman Han checked every torpedo and gun system personally. Soman was 33, cold and precise in everything she did. In combat, her hands never shook. Every shot she fired hit its target. Marine Commander Jamin Kwan assembled his soldiers in the deployment bay. Jamin was a wall of muscle at 36 years old, with scars from a dozen boarding actions. His Marines would follow him anywhere, even into the teeth of death itself. The Defiant's FTL drive reached full charge. Blue light surrounded the ship as it punched a hole through normal space and entered faster than light travel. The stars on the main screen blurred into lines of light. Minho gripped the arms of his command chair. In 20 minutes, they would drop out of FTL directly into a battle they probably could not win. His crew might die following his orders, but he knew in his heart this was right. Yuna stood beside him, reviewing battle strategies. We'll need to be creative to survive this. Humans are good at creative, Minho said quietly. The minutes ticked by like hours. The bridge crew worked in tense silence, each person preparing for what was coming. Taiyang kept monitoring the distress signal, which grew weaker as the convoy's shields failed. Dropping out of FTL in 30 seconds, Jiwan announced. Minho took a deep breath. All weapons, stand ready. Jiwan, bring us in fast and unpredictable. Confuse them. Yes, sir, Jiwan replied, a small smile touching her lips. 10 seconds. The crew braced themselves, dropping out now. The blue light faded. The Defiant burst back into normal space. And directly ahead, spread across thousands of kilometers, was chaos.